Hello and welcome to AIFF Presents. I'm Shah Sajati. I'm joined this evening by Arlington International Film Festival co-anchor April Rank and other distinguished guests from the festival. To my far right is April Rank. April, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm the executive director of the Arlington International Film Festival. The festival was founded by Alberto Guzman 6 years ago, and I came on board with him to help him produce it. During the day, I'm actually the business manager for Society of Arts and Crafts, and at night, this is my night and weekend job, and my love.
Thank you. Marga Varea?
Hi. Well, I'm a judge at the Arlington International Film Festival. I've been for the past 2 years. I love the festival, and it's been a great honor for me to do so. I'm also a filmmaker, and I've been working on film all my life. Started as a screenwriter a long time ago, moved into production, and for the past 10 years, I've been focused on social issue documentaries as an outreach and audience engagement director. Thank you.
And Bob Nesson?
Hi. Well, I am also a filmmaker and have been for many years. And I make pretty much films, documentaries that are about urban issues and social issues, social justice issues. For example, I'm working on one about people who are on a journey from prison back to rejoining their communities. I also teach at Emerson College. I've been doing that for about 10 years. And the courses that I teach are documentary for social action or other interdisciplinary courses, filmmaking and the environment, urban studies and filmmaking, those kinds of things. And I live in Somerville.
Thank you. And Eric Stange?
Thank you. I've been a judge for the festival now, I think for 4 or 5 years, and enjoyed it very much. I'm also a documentary filmmaker, so I tend to be drawn toward the documentaries in the festival, although part of the fun of being a judge is you get to see such a wide variety of films, so it's not just documentaries that I watch other things too. And I live here in Arlington.
Okay. So how many entries do you get for the festival?
We started out the first year with approximately 75 totaling the features and shorts, and now it's way over 2,400. It's a real bear to get our hands around, and consequently the judges were inundated with watching film. We had to increase the number of judges, and now I think we still need to increase the number of judges to lighten the load. It's just a lot of films to view.
So how many judges did you start out with, and how many do you have now?
We started out with 4. We have 12 now, and we have most all of our judges are local, but we did add 3 judges, one from, well actually 2 from LA this year. One is in production, and another one is screenwriter, playwright, and then we have another judge from New Hampshire that came on board that teaches and writes scripts for theater, primarily theater, but some film.
So that's a lot of films per judge. How does that work?
Well, we try to have at least 3 judges watch a single film, and the responses will be diverse. And we were just talking about this before we went on air. This year we didn't get together as a group physically. Everyone was mailing in their final comments and decisions from Spain and around the world. So, and how much we missed getting together. It's usually an interesting conversation of bantering back and forth and understanding why a judge really saw a spark in that film that someone else didn't see. And we've seen decisions be changed by listening to one another. And it's not, you know, I think the judges would agree, and they can speak more to this than I, but it's content and technical ability when you're looking at a film. But sometimes if you're watching a film and it needed to be edited, it's a 90-some minute film, but you're never going to see a story about storytelling in Morocco that continues to be passed down through generations. So do you sacrifice the need for editing and screen the film? And the decision, a year or two ago was yes, we need to show this film. So that's just a part of the filmmaking, the decision-making process.
So let me understand this. You assigned films. One film is assigned to 3 judges.
Right.
And they give you feedback. Each judge has a different method of giving feedback, and then judging by that, you decide whether or not that film is going to go to the next level.
Right, and basically we're limited with the number of time slots that we have, so we're looking at films that at least 2 judges have weighed in on, and they feel that it's just spectacular. So that will really weigh, and the letter that we send to filmmakers that we can't show their films, we say, your film was wonderful, and we had many deserving films this year, but we just did not have the programming time. And that's really the truth. I mean, we do get some that don't relate to our mission at all and have no place in our festival, but there are many that just, they're not 10s, and they're 8s, they're amazing films, but yet again, we're showing the 10s, so.
I remember a filmmaker / judge once said in an interview that a mediocre film he can watch without pause, but when watching a particularly good film, he pauses, gets up, walks around, maybe gets some food, so an hour-and-a-half film might take several hours to watch. Do you have similar routines when watching similar films like that? Any of you?
I don't, for one. I mean, because I know as a filmmaker that I make films to be watched in one fell swoop. I would hate the idea of someone getting up and walking away, even if they paused it. So no, I don't do that.
If I pause the film, that's a bad sign. A good film, I can't stop watching, and the world kind of disappears for me. But if I pause it and do something else, it's not working.
Sometimes I will start a film and watch a particularly compelling scene, and I'll ask myself, how did that work? And even though it's true that it's better to watch a film through from beginning to end, sometimes during the judging, I'll go back to review a particular scene or sequence because I find that there's something in there that I want to understand more fully at the moment. So
That has happened to you?
yeah.
Reviewing the film again at that time. So how did each of you get involved in AIFF? And how has the journey been for you so far?
I think April or Alberto, or both of you, approached me, I guess, probably by email. And I think my wife, Barbara, too, at the same time. We were both judges that first time. And then it was a much smaller group, so it was more of a sort of social gathering as much as anything. We didn't watch films as a group, but we discussed them as a group. And although I have to say, there was one summer when I think I watched 90 films. And I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to do that again. Maybe it wasn't 90. Maybe it just felt like 90, but it was close to 90. So fortunately, with more judges in recent years, that has changed considerably.
So when you watch 90 films, 90 independent films, do you have time to watch films that other people watch?
No, not that summer.
And do you miss that? at all?
Well, now, as I say, the load is lighter, so it's not so critical. So much easier now to watch films on the computer. I do like to make sure that I'm watching it under optimal conditions, even when they're piled up like that. So, but no, I can get out and do other things. It's not like that bad.
How did you get involved?
I don't quite remember how Alberto and April and I met, but we must have met a while ago locally. I've lived in Arlington for a long time now, and Somerville. I've been involved with film and the arts, and so we somehow met. And I was, like him, likely approached and invited by email, and that was last year. Actually, it was my first year with the festival. And I agree with him that last year, at least, the load was much heavier than this year. And I did struggle a little bit last year to watch all the films and give them the attention they deserve. So this year it's been a little more relaxed. I didn't pause them, going back to the previous question, but I did watch short films that I really liked 2 or 3 times. If I really like them, to figure out why I like them so much. And I had a great time. I think this system's more judges, lighter load works better.
I agree with that. By having a lighter load, it allows a judge, myself in this case, to really get deeply into the film and sometimes watch it twice, especially if it's a short, like 5-minute or 10-minute piece. And it's really very effective for me to be able to review a film twice and be sure that what I write about the film really rings true.
Do you normally tend to watch a film twice before you want to write a good recommendation for it, or before you want to write it off as a bad film?
Well, there are some criteria for judging that immediately throw the switch, either watch or don't watch. So if it's really poor camera images and ugly, it throws the switch off very quickly. And that's just one example. But if it's very compelling, it signals to me, pay attention to this one and really understand what the filmmaker is trying to do, and be very specific about why a film is chosen. So I will write, in fact, the exercise of actually writing a review, a short review, helps confirm the judgment, the accuracy of the judgment.
So that kind of brings me to my next question. What are the criteria that you need to check off to make a good film and to make a good film into a great film? What makes a great film? What are those boxes that you need to check in your head that to say this is the film that deserves to be recognized, deserves to be watched?
The story, definitely. The script is a big indicator.
So even if the editing, the cinematography isn't exactly on point, you would give it a pass if the story is absolutely amazing?
I wouldn't say I would give it a pass. It depends.
It depends, okay.
But the script, I would say, is a very heavy indicator for me that the film is good and deserves attention.
What about you?
I have to say, one of the first things I notice is how good it looks. I mean, we are talking about a visual medium, not necessarily good. I don't mean good quality, just how compelling and how interesting, and what is this person doing with a camera? And not that story isn't equally important, and all the other things too, but I found, and I discovered this, if you'd asked me this a few years ago, I might not have said this, but I've discovered that films that have great images, I stick with longer, even if I don't think that it's necessarily going to pay off in terms of story or in terms of structure or the other elements that make a successful film, because I appreciate that somebody has bothered to figure out how to get really wonderful pictures, which is what films are all about, or not all about, but at least a big part of what they're about. So, but all the pieces have to eventually be there. And if I have to say, after 15 or 20 minutes, I feel like there's just something that's just not going to work in this film, no matter what happens after this. Probably shouldn't admit this, but I have stopped watching a few, not very many, but there are a few that after about 20 minutes I've thought, this is not worth another 60 minutes of my time.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on what you said, because this is much like the conversations that we used to have when we'd sit around in the living room and over a glass of wine and talking about final films. But I think we put ourselves in the position of the viewer as well. You're sitting there 20 minutes in the theater seat, and if you're not taken in and grabbed by that film, you're thinking, my gracious, I think I'll just go out. So I think, you are looking for something that's going to really take effect and hold your interest with story, with how it's presented, the pacing, everything. And I say that not as a filmmaker, because I'm not. I'm just an appreciator of good film.
But there are a variety of criteria. So, for example, Eric refers to the need for very beautiful or high quality, or however we describe the quality of the visual composition, lighting, and so forth. But there are other films where there's a certain action in reality that is so compelling. For example, there's a film about what happened in Iran during the elections of, I think it's 2010, 2012, somewhere in there. And a young girl was in the middle of a protest where she was shot. And somebody recorded that with an iPhone and live. And so the overwhelming immediacy of that was so compelling that all the other criteria kind of went out the window. And so if a film is able to portray certain realities as they happen, and those realities are extremely moving and compelling, that kind of trumps the quality of the image. You can shoot this stuff with an iPhone and have powerful messages come through. And that, to me, is critically important when seeing films that are about social change, justice, those issues, war and peace.
Do you have any comments about what?
No, I guess I probably didn't explain thoroughly, because I totally agree with Bob. I mean, it's not necessarily the quality of the image, it's the compellingness of the image. It's what are you seeing that you haven't seen before and you're unlikely to see somewhere else. And that's what this festival is about. I mean, it's films from all around the world that are capturing stories, characters, and images that we just aren't going to see otherwise. They're certainly never going to be in the theaters. So yeah, I completely.
To me, what to me is a question is that that was never scripted, and what makes it so powerful was that it was an act of a citizen journalist just capturing a moment so powerful that. And what made it so powerful was the fact that it just happened, and he happened to grab his phone and just think quickly. If it had been scripted, it would not have been so powerful. So I don't think that moment would have had a place in a film festival. Would it? Maybe if they made a film about that moment and incorporated that image, that clip into it, maybe that would have made an interesting, compelling film, but that moment in itself would not be a film.
Well, there's an interesting film about what happened in Ukraine, in Kiev, during a period where the existing president, who was really a puppet of the Russian political apparatus, was kicked out. And it came about as a result of people gathering in the street and camping out. And there was a film made about that. And it was not a beautiful film in any way that we would judge, but the ongoing continuous recording of what was going on in this important political moment, which took place over actually weeks or maybe even a month, that was compelling. And the voices of people, or the person who was making the film, commenting, this is what I am seeing, this is what I am feeling, that made it compelling. And of course, it was put together in a way that incorporated so much that told us what was going on at this particularly critical point in history.
I just think that, or maybe I'm realizing this second, but for me as a judge, that criteria that we're talking about changes depending on the genre. So I don't apply the same criteria to a feature fiction film than to an animation short, than to a documentary about a social justice issue. So all those are completely different genres that have, to me, have different criteria that we can apply to them, because you cannot expect the same things from all of those different types of films.
Do you normally make up your mind about a film as soon as you've finished watching it, or do some films stay with you for a few days and might change your mind? You might love them, and after a few days you might think, I kind of liked it, and then I don't like it so much, or the opposite.
When we are judging and we have a long list of films to watch, I think that once we make a decision, or I'm speaking for myself, of course, I move on to the next, because there really isn't time to go back much later and review and think twice about the decision. It's a done deal.
I have to say, I think that the judges, when they are making decisions, they hold our mission statement very much in the forefront of their minds. So there may be a very good film, but does it really promote the festival's mission of promoting, the understanding among cultures? So that's, I think, in part an answer to your question as well.
If I watch a film, I usually know pretty quickly either if it's going to be a go or not. Sometimes, very rarely, it has happened to me that I finish a film and I write a negative review, and I do think about it a little bit. A few days later, I'm like, why didn't it really work? Should I watch it again? I don't know. I've had that thought, but very rarely. I usually, as he says, I either approve, pass it on or not.
Yeah, I agree with that. Although I've had the experience of having a film that I liked actually grow on me even more. And that happened with the film Elena, which was a difficult thing because it was sort of an experimental narrative film, part documentary, part narrative feature in some ways, very complex, very full of images that were very carefully created. It was not documentary images. And at first I liked it, I admired it, but because of the genre blurring, as April said, I was wrestling a little bit with the mission statement of the festival. But then I realized as days went by, it's just a brilliant film. I mean, sometimes they're just brilliant films. You can't quite say what kind of film it is, but it was very, very good.
How has being a judge inspired your own projects? The films that you watch, has it ever inspired your own projects that you do independently, professionally, on your own?
Well, yes. And the reason is because every time you watch a film, you learn something. And you can, at least theoretically, apply some of what you learn to your own work. So it's been valuable from that point of view.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it also opens my eyes anyway to what's going on in terms of young people making films around the world. I mean, you begin to realize, oh my God, everywhere. We see films from the sort of most remote areas, and some of them shot on cell phones. And yet they're making their way to the Arlington International Film Festival somehow. So that's inspiring in the sense of pulling me out of my own little world in Boston and a documentary community and realizing there are a lot of documentary communities around the world and people are shooting things all the time.
One that comes to mind is 5 Cameras. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
Did you see that?
I don't think I saw
Did
that.
you
Was
see
that
it?
this year?
No, I don't
No,
know that.
it wasn't at Arlington, I don't think.
Oh,
but
okay.
it is the story of a Palestinian man
Yes.
who was filming his life around him in the occupied territories.
He kept
And
losing
his
the
camera
cameras.
kept being destroyed.
Right, yeah.
Sometimes by the Israelis, sometimes it just fell apart, etc.
Amazing.
And so he made the film over many years, and this theme of 5 cameras that conveys the idea that he stuck with the project. No matter what happened, he stuck with it. And so you asked what some of the value of judging is, and by looking at that film, I said, you really need a commitment to be a filmmaker, especially for long form, long time commitment, where you follow some story over years, and that's what it takes. And you have to understand that to go into a bigger project.
I know that you divide the films by genre between the films, documentaries are sent to you, or films, social issue films are mostly sent to you. Has it been that films done by a certain part of the world, that you're gonna like, or you just have an opinion going if films that are made in just because of the issues that are facing that part of that region of the world are compelling to you?
No.
No? You
My
just
short,
go in
my
with a-
short answer is no.
No.
There is nothing that I have in my head before playing the film.
Okay.
And I like to think I'm not biased that way. Yes, not for me.
I just thinking you get excited. Oh, this film is from, I don't know, so and so. No, the answer is no.
Well, I get excited about seeing films from various places, but not any one place in particular. I mean, it's kind of fun to say, oh, West Africa, that's cool. I wonder what kind of people, what are they making there? And then one year we had a whole bunch of films from Eastern Europe. That was really fascinating. These little parts of Eastern Europe that and we never hear about it in the news. We don't know what's going on unless there's a war going on, and most of these films were not about wars. They were about much more sort of close to home, intimate subjects, and that was wonderful.
It's a great
think this-
learning experience.
That's exactly right. We learn about the world, and there's, for example, a film in Romania done in the subways. Did you remember this? Did you see this?
Yeah, I did.
Just beautiful storytelling. And what we get to see is the texture of life as it is. And the wonderful thing about film is that it can convey so beautifully and unobtrusively these textures of everyday life that are so compelling because we are curious humans and we want to connect with others, and we see by the humanity, if that's the right word, the value of other people's lives. And Eric was talking about, of places you wouldn't necessarily think of, like the subway in Bucharest, for example. But you see so much that you share in common with people. Even, homeless living in a subway, you find they're thinking about the same things we are thinking about.
And then there's the reality that you can learn a lot about a culture or a certain country by watching the film, but it's also true that sometimes a film might come from a certain country, but not being filmed specifically in that country or talk about any theme of that country. And so it might be produced and directed, and the crew might entirely be from a country, but then can be a universal story that cannot be placed anywhere, and that has happened to a lot of films I've watched.
There was a wonderful film, I don't think that came through Arlington Film Festival, International Film Festival, but it was about a window washer in Hong Kong. And the film was made by an American woman, actually, who went to Hong Kong and hung out on the platform with the window washer, or filmed through the window. Now, window washing of a tall tower these days is very universal. It's not just Hong Kong or New York or wherever. There are human experiences that the window washer can kind of express through this action, and the film was just beautiful and very compelling and very universal. And that's the point, that we can see things from other countries and immediately identify.
In your opinion, how do film festivals like this, like these, have inspired independent filmmakers make more films?
Well, I don't know really. I don't think I can speak from the filmmaker's point of view. Other than what they've said to me, that they're very grateful to have venues to play because these large theaters are not going to book them, and their work would not otherwise be seen. And I think that, especially if we bring them in for a Q&A or panel discussion and it's a substantive film, they're very grateful for having an audience that really is relating with them and getting some feedback. And it's a little payoff for, like you were saying, Bob, all the amount of time, especially with a doc, where you've had to maybe follow your, this theme or a person or a group of people and over a period of time. And it's an investment. It's a huge investment. And so it's a little payoff to them if they're sitting in front of an audience and they can talk about it, they can be asked questions, and they can really, relay the whole experience of what they've done. So that feels good. I've heard that from them.
Eric, this question is for you. You were a print journalist writing about art and culture before becoming a filmmaker. Are these mainly your inspirations for the stories you tell through film? The stories of real people and art and culture, and the stories that you favor when judging?
Well, I also am very interested in history. So it turns out I have made films about art, and I'm interested in films that go into the intersection of politics and culture and politics and family, and I've done some of those. But I've also done a lot of history films, and in fact more history films lately than the other kind. But I like to think that I come to the films in the festival that we're judging with an open mind. I don't really have any favorites. I tend to stick to the documentaries, but short, long, historical, contemporary, social issue, or simply telling a little slice of life kind of thing. I watch them all the same way. It's been a long time since I was a print journalist, so I've kind of keep thinking more in film terms these days, I guess, than I do print.
So again, with documentary and history again, so you have kept your interest around real people and not fictional characters.
Yeah, although I have made a couple of films that incorporate fiction into documentaries. I call them dramatized documentaries as opposed to docudramas, which is not a term I like. So, yes, I've done some dramatized documentaries with actors and kind of fictional components.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about the newest projects that you have?
Sure, there's a film coming up on Edgar Allan Poe. It's called Edgar Allan Poe, Buried Alive. It'll be on PBS on the American Masters series in fall of 2017. It's a bit of a wait. But it'll be showing at festivals over the next year before that.
Why Buried Alive?
Well, I did ask one person. I said, what do you associate most with Poe? And she said, being buried alive. And I thought, that's the title, if that's what people think, because we've been struggling with other titles. But it's a wonderful metaphor for everything that happened to him. He's been buried during his life and ever since under a whole mountain of misunderstandings and misconceptions about who he was and how he lived his life. And there are a lot of really scurrilous rumors around about him being a drug addict and this and that, none of which are true. So he was buried under a mountain of debt. He was buried, he had a lot to deal with, and I felt like buried alive was an appropriate metaphor.
Was it true that he never really liked Boston and his hometown?
No, he was scathing toward Boston. He was born in Boston, left as an infant, and the only other times he came back, he had nothing good to say about Boston.
Oh, well. Marga, when judging, are you ever aware of the budget that the film was available to the filmmakers? And if you were aware of this, if you had this knowledge, would that have ever affect your judgment in any way? Would you think that because they had smaller budget, some things would be okay, and if they had bigger budgets, they should have done the things differently?
No, absolutely not. I am unaware of the budgets. I don't think that's an information that even the festival has access to. It's absolutely not an issue for me. It's almost impossible to say what's in a film. It's a non-issue. I don't think about it at all.
I'm saying when, say you have a student film, this is an independent filmmaker or a first-time filmmaker, and you know they had limited budget. When you're playing the film, would you think that some things were okay when comparing to the film to a more experienced filmmaker whose films?
So experienced and new filmmaker are not related to the budget. So a new filmmaker with little experience and whatever budget can make a wonderful film.
Right.
And for the same reasons, an experienced filmmaker with a big or a small budget can make a very poor film. So the budget is an issue for the filmmaker, obviously, but once the film is made, all I'm looking for is what did they do with their money? What comes across through the screen? Did they make the right choices with their cast? How is the acting? What are the visuals? How does the story move along? Those are the things I care about. And as I said, it's not a relevant thing for me, the budget.
I just wanted to comment too. One of the judges this year, Paul Dervis from New Hampshire, he came across a grouping of short films that were submitted to AIFF by the same young woman. Well, he didn't know, young woman, old woman, whatever. And he was kind of taken with her shorts. And he was so taken that he Googled her and found out that she was a 21-year-old filmmaker. And she was, she had this polish that he calls me up on the phone. He says, April, I really think we need to show a couple of these films. This gal has really got it together at 21 years old. But interestingly enough, he didn't know how old she was when he started to watch the film. The films are what grabbed him. And they spoke to him and they said, "Oh my God, this is a really interesting way of showing film. She has a character about her filmmaking, and that really grabbed him." So I think that that's much the way it is with all the judges. I don't really think they're looking at like the age or the budget or anything like that. I think they're really looking at the films, the quality, the content.
I think I know the films you're talking about. I think I watched them.
The Young Canadian women?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
So we are going to choose a
Yeah.
couple of these films.
Yeah, so
Have you ever had entries by the same filmmaker that did not win the first few years or did not get very good reviews the first few years they entered, and you got to see their progress every time they submitted a new film over the years? Has that ever happened in the film festival?
I haven't noticed that.
Not aware.
I have seen where we've chosen a filmmaker as an official selection, and they've submitted their next film that they've been working on a year or two later. But I wouldn't know about any that were rejected and showed again.
And
Or-
when the ones that you chose, the next films that they sent, were they any better? Was there any progress or different messages that they worked on?
I would say different messages. I'm thinking about Tim Scorson, 0%, that was filmed at Sing Sing Prison, and then the next film that he submitted was a short called I think Everything. The title misses me right now, but it filmed in Honduras with the older man that was limited to, I think, a wheelchair, and he takes his wheelchair apart and makes this art object out of all these found parts. Very different story. One is really about the prison population and education, and another one about a gentleman that has no money and is given a wheelchair and decides instead of using it to get around, he's going to take this apart and make art. So very different.
So
I
how
want
many
to see that film.
sounds interesting.
how many films do you show at the festival this year?
We're going to show about 55 this year with features and shorts.
55. And so the mission statement of AIFF is to foster appreciation for different cultures by exploring the lives of people around the globe through independent film to nurture the next generation of filmmakers. Am I right?
Yes.
How do you connect to stories of people from around the world when you haven't had the same experiences on the same level as the stories of people whose experiences are closer to yours? When you see a film from, say, West Africa or from the Middle East, from these stories where people's experiences are very different, to, say, a filmmaker who sends their film from Massachusetts or from somewhere else in the U.S. where is closer to home, from a generation when they're from a generation that is closer to your generation. How do you connect to those experiences that are further away from you on the same level?
I mean, I think that's part of what makes a film good, is it's got a kind of universality. It speaks to everybody, or at least most people. And it's interesting when you mention a Massachusetts film. I mean, there aren't that many submissions from the U.S., but there are always some, because it is, after all, an international film festival, and I think April and Alberto go to great lengths to solicit entries from all around the world. But there are some from the U.S., and I have to admit that whenever I'm looking at a film made in the U.S., judging it, I keep in mind, well, wait a minute, though, it is an international film festival, so that's the harder part, is to try to think, as an American looking at an American-made film, is this going to have that kind of universality to audiences elsewhere in the world that I like to think the ones that we get from elsewhere in the world, the good ones, have for me. And that's a harder thing to do. I mean, I'd much rather watch a film from West Africa or South America or some part of the world I really don't know much about and have it touch me than try to figure out if an American-made film is going to touch other people. That's a tough call.
You know, for people in this country who watch a lot of television, like Fox News, etc., you get a very narrow and very carefully controlled kind of message about this country, the political culture, what our values are, fire burning down in a house, you know, too many guns. And when you see films from around the world, you see the contrast between what is on the media in this country and what really serves other people to open up the lives of people around the world. And the contrast is profound between the media portrayal of this country. So going to the earlier point about whether a film is made in this country, is it translatable to others? It's so interesting that very specific views of other cultures tend to be universal. And whether it's made in this country and shown elsewhere or vice versa, people will get it because they will relate to those things in their own lives that are so similar and parallel.
And I think that's what, you know, the mission expects to, you know, to play on is our interconnectedness. It's whether you're homeless in Singapore or you're homeless in Boston, you have to deal with living and taking care of basic needs. Or if it's love lost in Afghanistan and a love lost in Connecticut, there are some commonalities that just, that humanity that connects us. And it's beautiful. I mean, you might see, I mean, I kind of lament already. I'm just, the Ukrainian short that I can't show because there's not enough time, and it's not a 10, it's an 8, you know, and it's one of those great little shorts. But it's about a woman that works for the state, and she rakes leaves. It's called The Falling Leaves, and a very poetic, beautiful film. And she discovers somebody in her house. She's working right in her neighborhood, and she goes home for lunch, and she sees that there's this man in her home. Well, he had been hiding out under these pile of leaves that she's raking up and was wanted by the law. And she's this older woman that has kind of not had male attention probably for a very long time, doesn't even know how to respond, but lets him stay. And then they share a meal together. So first of all, you see where she lives, this housing project, which I thought was very interesting. You see how the house was built, or the housing project was built, materials. I'm seeing that. I was in property management. I love seeing that kind of stuff. And how walking up the stairs, not kept, you know, I mean, trash everywhere, just not a pleasant place. And then you go inside her apartment and you see what's it like to be in a Ukrainian kitchen, and how she's sitting down and feeding this man, and it's just lovely. I mean, it's a narrative, but yet there are some basics that you take away from it that you have a little bird's eye view of what life is in a little remote Ukrainian village, you know, for someone working for the state, could be in South Boston.
And that's the amazing thing about film.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know you're having the festival at Capitol Theater this year, and what makes Capitol Theater a good venue for the festival?
Well, we're delighted to be back in Arlington. We had a great run at the Kendall Square in Cambridge last year, but we were really looking for a venue, and Arlington is a little short of venues. We don't want to work at making it comfortable, so really we need to be in a theater setting. So the Capitol's perfect. It's ideal, and The owner welcomed us back to Arlington with open arms and made it very possible for us to be here, so we're glad.
What are some of the messages you feel we need to see more of in the film industry, in your opinion?
The universality of humanity, how we all face the same issues. And just a quick aside, I was once in Israel, in Jerusalem, doing research for a film project. And I wandered over to a little cafe in the West Bank. I sat down with two guys who were Palestinians at the same table. And we fell into a conversation. And
In English?
yeah, in English. And the question was, what do you want? And the answer was peace, security, good food, health care, an opportunity for their children to get an education and be secure. What's the difference between what they wanted and what we want? Well, the point is that the films that we show, that you sponsor at the Arlington Film Festival, show those basic values. Every single one of them, in some fashion, goes to that point. And to me, that's the value.
And it can be done through humor, through a narrative, or it can be a very serious documentary. You know, I mean, I laugh. There's this one narrative that we're showing this year, and it's an Italian that comes over thinking that he's going to find the American dream in New York City. And he's trying to date, he's trying to get a decent job, and all of these crazy things that are happening, and I'm laughing. I'm sitting back there laughing. So I think, you know, it's a really lovely message about what it's like to be an immigrant coming to the U.S. with certain perceptions of what it should be like, and perhaps not having a very realistic view of it. So one can sit and laugh, and then one can sit and cry. We have both kinds of films.
And final question, how has AIFF evolved over the years, and what are your hopes for its future?
Well, I think the partnerships that we've been able to create have been the biggest evolution of the festival. You know, we've brought in Jose Antonio Vargas right before he was arrested at the border, and we had this relationship with MIRA, Massachusetts Immigrant and Refugee Advocacy Coalition. They're our fiscal agent, but they wanted to help us sponsor this. We showed it at the Boston Public Library for free to the public, and had a Q&A, brought him in, and it was just these kinds of happenings probably could not have happened the first year, but they're slowly happening. And this year we're having our kickoff at the Greenway. Again, the Rose Kennedy Greenway Conservancy, I don't think they would have approached us several years ago, but now there's a certain reputation that the festival has for the films that we show, and we've been invited to show an international shorts program. So that's this Friday night at 7 o'clock on the Greenway in Dewey Square.
Anything you would like to add that I haven't asked so far?
Well, I had one more thought about being a judge, because as much as it can be daunting to watch dozens and dozens of films, there's also an incredible power to it. It's an experience I'd never had before I got involved with this festival, of watching so many films, short and long and different genres, in a very concentrated period of time. I mean, not days, but weeks or months. It really changes your idea of the power of film somehow. And even the ones that never get near the festival stick with you. And it's really extraordinary. You get it's like you're doing around the world 3 or 4 times really fast. And that's an experience I wish everybody could have.
May I jump on that just briefly? Also, the sense of responsibility to the filmmakers is profound. And we, as judges, take that seriously.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This year, the Arlington Film Festival will be at the Capitol Theater in Arlington from October 27 to October 30th. On behalf of ACMI and everyone at AIFF and all the guests in the studio, thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Shah Sajati. See you at the festival.